and welcome to one of the last EHP talks of the year, Heat On, CO2 Emissions Down, a collective approach to heating and cooling decarbonization. It is quite topical, as already some parts of Europe are under the snow and winter is setting in. I am Pauline Decab, Policy Director at European Power, the Association for Sustainable District Heating and Cooling. And we are thrilled today to have you join us this session, which we are presenting in collaboration with Regulatory Assistance Project, RAP. So today we will focus on the recently adopted Fit for 55 package and its pivotal role in steering the decarbonization of our energy systems. And in particular, we will delve into the critical role of district heating and cooling as a key ingredients in achieving decarbonized heating and cooling. So through this webinar, we will explore the current landscape and looking in particular at the provision of the Fit for 55 package, which should further this decarbonization of heating and cooling. And we also aim to initiate a reflection on what lies ahead for the coming decade, also identifying the necessary step to accelerate the heat transition. For this, I am joined by two other speakers today, Sam and Madis. So Sam Oxenor is associate at RAP, the Regulatory Assistance Project, and Madis Lannister is joining us from the European Commission from DG ENER. And in terms of the content, we will have three presentations. First, we will start with Madis, who will tell us a little bit more about the measure in the Fit for 55 package and how the Commission is going to work on the implementation of these measures together with the Member States. And Sam and I, we will cover key findings and recommendations from three different documents that have been recently presented, and we will cover policy principles, recommendation that can significantly accelerate the trajectory towards decarbonization of heating and cooling. Perhaps before getting started, some housekeeping notes. So the session will be recorded and made available later on the EHP YouTube channel for those who would like to replay or couldn't join. And we also encourage your participation through the Q&A sessions. There will be three of those, one after each presentation. For this, use the Q&A box in the bar below. And I think that's it for the moment. Prepare perhaps your questions for Madis, as I'm told that Madis will have to leave us at 3:30. So we will take most questions addressed to Madis at this moment. And I wanted to start with a poll to get our audience going. So let's launch the poll. I will read it out loud. What do you consider the most crucial factor for successful district heating and cooling decarbonization? You can make only one choice, so choose wisely. So first, policy and regulatory framework, technology innovation, financial incentives, consumer awareness, or a mix of all the above. So we will wait maybe a minute so you can make your choice. Maybe a couple of more seconds for the one who cannot decide, and we will close the poll and look at the results. All right, so I think there is a trend towards policy and regulatory framework, but maybe the biggest share of our audience today thinks that it's still a mix of the above. Okay, well, thanks. I hope you're warmed up. We're going to listen to Madis now, and I think you can take over the control of the presentation.
Thank you, Paulina, for the introduction and introducing me. So, yeah, as told, I'm Madis Laaniste, representing DG Energy in this meeting, where I'm working in the energy efficiency unit of the Directorate B. And my primary responsibilities are linked with energy efficiency in heating and cooling. So it covers the topics related to the district heating, cogeneration, waste heat use, and etc. So what I planned to talk today was about why, first of all, why the specific attention to heating and cooling is necessary, and why we are also looking into the district heating and cooling in our legislation and our policy activities. So, and the next slide comes here. So, first of all, yeah, I hope everyone is aware what are the key indicators in monitoring our policy progress. And yeah, one very important indicator for the heating and cooling area is definitely the share of the renewables in the heating and cooling. And this indicator is put in place in the Renewable Energy Directive, and it's monitored actively, and the member states are asked actively how they are progressing in the decarbonisation in the heating and cooling through the wider use of renewables in heating and cooling. So the heating and cooling is still heavily dominated by fossil fuels, and the share of heating and cooling in overall energy mix is still very high, and it's half of the Europeans' consumed energy goes to the heating and cooling sector. But as you can indirectly derive from the slide here, is that the share of the fossil fuels is still high, and fossil fuels are generating the dependency and also the environmental problems, climate change, and therefore this particular area of heating and cooling needs specific attention in our ambitions to decarbonize European energy mix and reduce carbon emissions in Europe in general. Why district heating is so important in this sense is that EU has quite large degree of urbanization. So 75% of the EU's population is living in the cities or densely populated areas, and therefore these network-based solutions are often the solutions that could be interesting for the local heat supply or cooling supply. And in network-based solutions, typically you have wide choice of inputs that you can use for the satisfying the heating and cooling demand. Secondly, what's available in the networks is integration of other resources, and this is particularly important in view that the European Union and in general we have still quite a lot of waste heat available that is not used in useful purposes, but it's diluted to the atmosphere or some to other places, and this system integration could be way forward in improving our energy performance in general, and utilized as a source for the heating and cooling in our energy systems. But at the same time, what can be said and what should be reminded that still the share of district heating and cooling is not that big in the European heating and cooling market, and in overall energy mix this plays approximately 11-12% of the heat is coming through the district heating and cooling networks, and the rest comes often from individual solutions. So there is approximately 17 district heating and cooling systems in Europe. And at the same time, the number of individual installations providing heat in European alone is somewhere at the level of 125 million. So there is a great difference in the use of these systems. So when we are putting the focus on the heating and cooling in general, we should not forget about individual solutions, and also work with solutions that provide incentive for the local heating sector to convert and decarbonize the existing fleet in that particular sector. What's positive about the district heating is that district heating in general has been progressing more rapidly than the local heating and cooling solutions in terms of renewable energy use. And the renewable energy use in district heating systems and other clean technologies is higher than in other parts of the energy system. So we can say that in district heating, approximately 40% of the heat comes from renewable energy sources and waste heat. So this is a good achievement that we have achieved in Europe in the past decades. But in overall, the situation is still changing slowly, I would say. So within past 10 years, the share of the heat, renewable heat and cold has increased by 6% percentage points, and this needs to be increased in order to effectively achieve our climate and energy targets. So therefore, the Fit for 55 package and our new initiatives address the heating and cooling sector, and we will continue to put our focus to the heating and cooling sector in order to achieve this change and transformation in the heating and cooling sector. But with today's presentation, I'm trying to summarize what's been agreed within the Fit for 55 package, and particularly in the Energy Efficiency Directive. And first of all, what's the biggest achievement, in my opinion, is the new definition of the efficient district heating and cooling, putting in place a clear pathway towards 2050. And there are also some other important provisions, like putting additional requirements for the district heating systems where new units are added or substantially refurbished. And in addition, there will be a requirement for the planning in all the district heating systems to convert systems into efficient district heating and cooling systems. A new element is more focused to the data centers, and this is complemented with some other provisions on the cost-benefit analysis, where we are looking more broad set of installations within the cost-benefit analysis instead of focusing on power stations and boiler houses. We are going to search for the opportunities to use the heat from service facilities, or and use the waste heat from the data centers. So there will be more broad assessments made on this segment, where what might provide the waste heat to the district heating networks and be a source for the more efficient energy supply in district heating and cooling. And the provisions in the Energy Efficiency Directive are complemented with provisions in the Renewable Energy Directive, and these will bring in the obligation to provide the third party access in some cases. Also, there are requirements on the integration of the planning of the district heating and other energy networks. And yeah, this Fit for 55 package is also complemented with new initiatives coming from the Repower EU policy paper. And with this Repower EU, we are particularly paying much attention to the local heating solutions and trying to achieve that more heat pumps will be installed across the Europe. And the general target in Repower EU is that approximately 30 million heat pumps will be installed by 2030 in EU. So regarding details in the Energy Efficiency Directive, what has been recently agreed about the potential change in the district heating and cooling. So with the new directive, we are going to change the definition of the efficient district heating and cooling, and there are a lot of numbers and different numbers of shares that have been put in place in the directive. And but what's most important consequences of these new provisions is that as of 2028, only high efficiency cogeneration can be counted in when we are trying to achieve the level of the efficient district heating and cooling. So at the moment, all the cogeneration plants can be contributors to the efficient district heating and cooling systems, but in later stage, only high efficiency cogeneration plants will be able to do that. In 2035, there will be a big change in terms of sources of the energy in the efficient district heating and cooling systems. And as of 2035, no systems will be qualified as efficient district heating systems that are purely relying on the fossil fuels. And high efficiency cogeneration from fossil fuels doesn't help you to achieve the standard of efficient district heating and cooling. Later on in 2045, according to this definition, the cogeneration is not counted anymore, and in 2050, all the system supply should come from the renewables or waste heat. So these are 4 important messages from the definition of the efficient district heating and cooling. With the directive, we have also introduced a second option how to show the compliance with the definition of the efficient district heating and cooling. It's through the carbon emissions threshold, specific carbon emissions threshold. And as you can see, there is a stepwise approach to decrease the maximum limit from the district heating until 2050. So the limit will be gradually lowered through the next decades. And member states may use also that option to define or qualify their district heating systems. The both ways of defining the district heating and cooling might be used simultaneously. So member states might have systems that are fulfilling the carbon emissions limit or meeting the definition that is mostly based on the renewable energy share. What's also important in the directive regarding the district heating and cooling systems is that there will be a new requirement to do the heating and cooling conversion plans, and with the plans every 5 years there should be assessment how to convert the existing systems into efficient district heating and cooling plans. So what's the key element? What are the key elements of these plans is to find the ways how to improve the energy performance in the systems, how to reduce the distribution losses, and finally, how to increase the share of renewable energy in heating and cooling. And there is a requirement for these plans that they should be approved by the competent authority in the member state. So there is a big change for the large number of district heating systems across Europe regarding the legal obligations for those systems. What's also important is to remind that in addition to specific requirements for the district heating and cooling, we have general obligations applying to all the heating and cooling market, and there is still in place the comprehensive requirement that the member state should present their comprehensive assessments on the heating and cooling sector, identifying the most resource and cost-efficient solutions for the heating and cooling needs. And in addition to that, there is a new requirement that in all the large municipalities having the population over 45,000, there should be prepared local heating and cooling plans. And these are particularly relevant for the areas where there are district heating systems in place or planned. And we see that there is a good chance of collaboration between the private and public authorities to set clear pathways towards the future decarbonization of their heating and cooling supply in those locations. So that was my quick summary of the situation, what we have in the heating and cooling sector after adoption of the Fit for 55 package, and what are the new obligations in the way ahead of us. So thank you for the attention. Here I will stop my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madis, for this scene setting and quite good roundup of all the provisions that are relevant for the district heating and cooling sector. I see that we have some questions. Maybe we start, as it looks like, clarification question. Did I understand correctly that member state can use both efficient DHA requirements at the same time? So in the efficient district heating and cooling definition.
Yes, they can do it on the same time. So basically, two ways of qualification. The systems are available for the member states, but the second comes with the strings attached. So they should notify to us that they are going to use that specific thresholds approach in their and carbon emission based approach for us.
So could we imagine within the same member state to have the two options in the definition cohabiting? So one system could use one and another could use the other. I think maybe that's the
that's the correct interpretation, that there are both availabilities.
Okay.
But not within the same system, so it will be making the things too complicated.
Indeed. Thanks. Very clear. Second clarification question. Could you please clarify the simultaneous application? Okay, that's I think these were the same questions, basically. Yeah, okay. I think so. We did address this. You understand the same, huh? These were the.
Yes, I think it's the same questions.
Okay. Perfect. There is not more question, but I have one for you. So I think we started with this poll that showed us a strong role for the legislative and regulatory framework. We should see that with regards to heating and cooling, and in particular district heating, there are a lot of provisions that should really push the sector to already be on track to implement 2030 targets. We also see we have a pathway and milestones. But so in the context of both the implementation of Fit for 55, but also thinking already ahead with the next political mandates, What do you see lies ahead in terms of continuing the promotion of the clean heating transition? It's quite a broad question, so you can
Okay. Yeah.
tackle it either implementation or more forward-looking, as you want, or both.
Of course, yeah, certainly there is a lot of things are going on, and important exercise at the moment that we are going to finalize is the first assessment of the draft national energy and climate plans, and looking into how the member states have themselves planned the approach to increase the share of the renewables in district heating and cooling. And what's also important is that we are not finalizing our work here and wait for the member states for 2 years to transpose the legislation. But next thing for us is to support the member states in their transposition process, and we are meeting the member states regularly. We are planning the missions to the member states. We are planning also the guidelines of how to implement the provisions of the directive, and this applies also to the heating and cooling chapters of the directive. So, and yeah, we are continuing activity depending on the political mandate what the next commission will have, and probably there is continuing ambition to move towards the 2050 targets, and there will be ambition to set up a political framework how to ensure that in 2040 we have supportive framework in place to stick to this pathway towards 2050. But yeah, it's important what's going to be the result of the next elections, and what's the new political mandate for the next commission.
That's very clear. Thanks. Sam, do you have a question? Or do you want to jump in at this stage?
Do I have a question? Yeah, maybe first of all, thank you, Manis, for the very useful overview. I was curious if you would be able to say something on the future, maybe more of the decarbonization pathway. And I don't know if this is something you can say something about or not, but do you think, because it mainly will apply to larger district heating systems, that with this definition of efficient district heating, we will manage to get the whole sector on track? Or do you think we will need additional measures for maybe smaller systems?
Well, thanks for your question, Sam. Yeah, indeed, we might leave out a certain portion of the district heating systems out of the scope of this legislation, but there it depends a little bit about the member states' specific approaches to the district heating sector and how they are going to address smaller systems. And quite many member states are still focusing on the small systems because it's efficient ways to decarbonize the district heating sector and to fulfill the obligations arising from the effort sharing regulation. So I assume that there will be still member states who are investing to decarbonize the district heating systems, and under these conditions also the requirements arising from the directive should be followed. These apply also to small systems when investments are made, but they don't have the obligation to put in place the decarbonization plans that are required from the larger systems. But I hope that the district heating will be on the focus of the next EU funding schemes that will be in place in the next multi-annual financial framework. Thanks.
Thanks, Magis. I know you need to leave soon, but we have one more question from the chat. Is there a requirement in EED that electrical energy used for heat pumps need to be generated from renewable energy sources after 2035?
Well, yeah, this accounting of the renewable energy in from the heat pumps has special rules, and what concerns the EED, there has been a decision that all the energy that comes from the heat pumps can be considered as renewable. So it's a specific rule to promote the wider use of the heat pumps and low temperature systems. But not all the energy that comes from the heat pumps can be considered as energy that helps to fulfill renewable energy targets by the member states. So that's the situation what we have.
All right. No more questions. So I can only thank you, Madis, for joining us today and taking the time to show all these provisions that will help the heating and cooling be further decarbonized. And I am sure that we will continue our dialogue and see each other around in Brussels. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a nice continuation of the seminar. Bye.
Thank you. So I am actually taking over to give you a short presentation. So I am Pauline, and I'm the policy director at Euroheat. Yeah, coming to Repower EU, basically the most recent global energy crisis that we had was triggered by, as you know, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And this was, of course, also another wake-up call to accelerate the energy transition and the heat transition, because this was also a heat crisis. So the Repower Plan was the response from the EU to try to tackle this global energy market disruption. So there were sort of three pillars that can be identified. First, of course, reducing the demand of gas and also electricity, as shown on the first graph. Then the bar chart is showing us the diversification of natural gas supply to try to divert the Russian imports towards other suppliers, and last but not least, also the greening of the supply. So we've seen that this package actually bore some fruits. It tackled the situation. So there were substantial efforts that were made in finding new suppliers. We see also the increased capacity in terms of renewable electricity, and also the reduction of gas import. And interestingly, you can see that the six top countries that managed to do above 40% gas savings were also countries where district heating is largely developed. So we can see that district heating has really a role to play to save gas. But what was also evident, if we look at the result of the Repower EU, is this, and Madis also showed that, this gap that is existing between the electricity sector that has successfully decarbonized up to 35% with renewable electricity, versus the heating and cooling sector that is still lagging a little bit behind. And here we saw that there is a high potential for district heating to contribute to raise the bar, as we are already for above 40% renewable and wasted driven. And here you see that 6 of the countries on the top, on the frontliners, are also out of 7 district heating countries. If we are looking into let's say the short-term potential of district heating to slash natural gas import by 2030, here we see that it has the potential is on 3 different levels. So first, a change in the production mix. So we will substitute some fossil fuels with renewable production. Second, it will also rely on an expansion of the market, so from the current 13% to 20% by 2030. And then the third reduction will go via the use of biomethane in district heating. So maybe just as a clarification, this data has been modeled by Aalborg University and is from the study that we showed at the beginning called Heat Matters, the missing link in REPowerEU. Yeah, so obviously district heating won't be the only way to reduce the natural gas demand. There will be others that are also shown on this graph. So energy efficiency in buildings, households equipped with heat pumps, renewable deployment, etc. And this scenario is actually modeled 15% more savings than what is foreseen with the Fit for 55 and REPowerEU, just by also modeling this type of synergies between sector and the flexibility that can also be provided by district heating. If we look a little bit more into this changed mix, yeah, sorry, it's a little bit small, but the key takeaways here are the significant increase of the use of geothermal and waste heat. So 29% for these two combined in 2030 and 49% in 2050. And as I just mentioned, the district heating will also have an integrating role of fluctuating renewable energy, and this both by the use of thermal storage and also flexible operation of CHP. So here you see it's modeled on the left graph, so to be used in the winter. And also, of course, with the use of this renewable electricity in large-scale heat pumps. Of course, this change in mix needs to be combined with more efficient and smarter buildings, so renovation will be necessary. And both this combination of district heating and efficient buildings will enable several things. So the direct use of low to medium temperature waste heat sources and renewable sources such as deep geothermal, higher COP of large-scale heat pumps that will be combined with waste heat or geothermal, and also shaving the winter peaks, so change structure for the heat demand. And this is also what is represented here. Continuing, but you may ask, where is this potential? So the study also provides some insight into where is the potential on which markets district heating will increase. So here we have the countries that have very low shares now, so below 6%, and also the countries that are already having average shares of between 10 and 20%. So here the study is anticipating a growth in the district heating sector, so between 10 to 15% by 2030 and 30 to 50%, so market share in the heat sector in 2050. And also, actually, countries where district heating is well developed also still have some margin to grow, so to cover the rest of fossil fuel installation and easily connect these additional customers. We have seen a different representation here, and I will come in a moment to the recommendation, but we know that we have a strong legislative framework that will lead us up to carbon neutrality in 2050, so I will not go over this again. Madis did that for us, but just to say that there are really some safeguards and milestones that will push the sector forward. But if we want a decarbonized district heating sector, we need these 4 pillars that we have identified. So first, the make buildings DHC ready or clean heat ready, let's say. This will go through, for instance, the lowering of the flow temperature, and Sam will tell us more about that, or the refurbishment, including hot water loops. Of course, as we already discussed, we need to deploy clean and renewable heat sources. We need to build out, expand, and also refurbish existing infrastructure. And last but not least, the component of flexibility. So unlocking energy system integration will be key. So now I will go on to recommendations that are not from the Aalborg study, but that are actually from the blueprints launched by Eurit and Power a couple of weeks ago. So one of the key aspects, I will start with that, is this district approach to building renovation and also energy performance assessment. So whenever we are renovating one or several buildings, we need to really consider this district approach and make an assessment at district level, considering what type of clean heat sources are available, be it waste heat or others. And this goes hand in hand with the planning of heating and cooling. So as Madis mentioned, we have now an obligation for cities to plan above 45,000 inhabitants. And these plans are not compulsory to implement. So what we are suggesting instead is a zonal approach to clean heat subsidies. So wherever it has been identified that district heating was the best solution, the support should be provided to connect to district heating. Wherever heat pumps have been identified as the best solution, subsidies for heat pumps should be provided. So a very clear approach that enables the consumer to really make the right choice. Then we have some recommendation on the financial aspect. We know that some of these investments have high capex and they are considered risky by investors. So solutions such as insurance schemes for waste heat or for geothermal energy with the first drilling should be considered. There are already examples of that, for instance, in France with a scheme for geothermal energy. And this should really push investments forward. Another aspect is the financing landscape, and I was happy to hear Madis talking about the fact that he was hoping the MFF would focus greatly on heat. That's very important, especially that the current financing landscape for clean heating projects is quite fragmented across many different programs and funds. So we would like to suggest an EU heat fund based on or inspired from the EU Invest program to consolidate all these parts of financing the clean heat transition. Or alternatively, as it is done in member states, for instance, in France and in Czechia with the heat program under the modernization fund, there could be a mandate for member states to put in place such funds. Another aspect is state aid procedures. I will not go in depth in that, but the point is that state aid investment in procedure in clean heating projects are sometimes too long and hinder the development of these projects. So the process should be really fast tracked. And on top of that, we're also advising that there should be an increased state aid allocations for local heat planning and implementation, also to unlock these plans and for municipality to have the resources. Another aspect is the CO2 price that was adopted in the ETS2. We know that there were a lot of concerns around negative social effects, so it resulted in a price cap of 45 euro per ton of CO2. So this is a first step, but this lower price cap will not enable a level playing field across the heating sector. So collective heating installations such as district heating are under the ETS1 will have a higher price. So we are asking for conversions of the price, and this conversion should be assorted also by dealing with this possible social impact and offsetting this impact through, for instance, climate funds and support for development of clean heat. I'm coming to the two last recommendations before concluding. So a very important aspect will be this unlocking the synergies between the heat grid and the electricity grid. For this, we have many recommendations, but I will give you two main ones. So sometimes we see that the market design is not incentivizing and rewarding the thermal-based flexibility. So there are high network tariff, taxes, and levies for electricity that are not fit for the integration with thermal grids. So we are asking for instance, dynamic pricing for customers that are using e-boilers or large-scale heat pumps. And another part is connected to the requirements of the Renewable Energy Directive. We have a mandatory or joint planning of infrastructure, so with the electricity DSO and TSO. And this should really be done systematically to explore the potential of district heating providing balancing services to electricity grids. And last but not least, we are already starting thinking about the 2040 framework. So here we have identified some lag in the modeling strategy of the Commission. So here, also in connection with the Aalborg study, we are calling to upgrade the EU modeling tools to better reflect the contribution of thermal solutions in providing flexibility. And we would really like to see the potential of district heating reflected in the next modeling exercise and the upcoming 2040 targets. And on this, I will thank you for your attention. And we can go to a poll and then open the floor for some questions. Okay, yeah. I think there's some fault. Okay. How convinced are you about the potential of district heating network in achieving the net zero emissions by 2030? So from 0 to 5 being the most convinced, I guess we don't have the. Yeah, I let you vote. I cannot vote myself, so I will not influence our audience. Send over. Okay, let's close the poll and have a look. How optimistic or not is our audience after hearing all the new measures in place? So, okay, this is nice to see that, yeah, mostly people think that the 2050 net zero target is achievable. I think obviously we have a pathway, we have some provision in place, but what I wanted to also maybe hear questions to the audience from myself is what more do we need? So beyond this framework brought by the Fit for 55, what do you consider will be important? And I see that for now we don't have questions, so then I will pass on the floor to Stem that will tell us from the perspective of RAP what more do we need to do. And maybe in the meantime, then you can already put your contribution in the chat to tell us a little bit your thoughts about this question.
Great, thank you, Pauline. Hi, everyone. So my name is Sam Oksanar, and as said, I'm with the Regulatory Assistance Project. and we are a global NGO providing independent support to governments and regulators in the energy transition. Today, I would like to present a set of principles that we've developed at RUP to support policymakers and regulators in decarbonizing district heating. And this is based on a study called Warming Up to It, Principles for Clean, Efficient and Smart District Heating. All right, let's get started. So, as Pauline has already extensively shown in her presentation, there's this huge potential for district heating to provide clean heat. However, in making this happen, there's two main challenges. On the one hand, it's really decarbonizing existing district heating systems, where we still have around 60% of fossil fuels in the mix, and there's especially a significant share of very polluting coal and lignite, which we will need to get rid of. And the second part of the challenge is really expanding and developing new district heating systems that are clean from the get-go. This is maybe a bit of a variant on the potential graph that Pauline also shared. We see a huge difference in the share of district heating between countries in Europe, and also the share in which they are decarbonized. And beyond decarbonization, there's also many systems in Europe that face challenges on modernization and energy efficiency, and related to that also their economic viability. So this is really the double challenge that we need to tackle if we really want to make the potentials that we see in the field become reality. And we think it is very important that we do this and that we do expand district heating, as it can provide enormous benefits to the wider energy system. So on the one hand, it's unlocking this potential of ambient, waste, and geothermal heat sources, but it also really has additional benefits beyond that, which is really when it comes to increasing energy efficiency, for example, due to benefits of scale, meaning you need lower total capacity. If you aggregate the heat loads, if, for example, instead of giving everyone their own building level heat pump, doing one large heat pump, you can use a lower total capacity, saving also on investment costs. And also by putting all these heat loads together, it becomes more predictable, also meaning that the operations can be done more efficiently. And additionally, very, very importantly, something also mentioned by Pauline is the flexibility in supply and also demand of heat, and also connected to storage. This is something we will need a lot of in a fully renewable system. For example, the International Renewable Energy Agency estimates that thermal storage right now is around 234 gigawatt hours. And if we go for a look at, for example, a super ambitious renewable energy scenario for 2040, the EU alone would need 800 terawatt hours of thermal storage for 2040. So that's a mind-boggling increase in thermal storage that we need. And district heating could be a very good way to provide that storage and make sure we can meet our heating needs purely with renewable energy. But to take up this key role, while at the same time keeping heat affordable, we need to make sure that district heating and cooling does not only become clean, but also efficient and smart, especially to make sure that our investments are really put in the right place and we keep things cost effectively. And to achieve this, we really need to make sure policy promotes the right things. And so this is what we hope to do with our set of policy principles, to really give direction on where to go with district heating and regulating district heating. So in our view, it's really important to put efficiency first, whether it's in production, distribution, and consumption of heat, because it really reduces the size of the decarbonization challenge we have, and at the same time it lowers costs, meaning we make sure heat stays affordable. Then we really need to use local heat planning, enhance alignment between developments in heat supply, but also on the other hand, distribution and demand, and including where relevant, also the phase out of gas grids. Then third, we see big value in avoidable waste heat. We've seen the potentials also in the study by Aalborg that Pauline presented. So there is a huge potential of available and unavoidable waste heat, but we need to find ways to make use of that and get it to the heat users. Then we need to really ensure end user protection and at the same time enable viable business models. So we need to shield users from potential monopolistic behavior by district heating operators, but at the same time we need to balance it with finding business models that ensure there's interest in investing in expanding district heating. So we need to find that balance between protecting consumers and enabling viable business models. And then finally, we also really see this key that we reward energy system integration. Pauline also ended with it in one of her policy recommendations. There's a huge value in coupling the heat and electricity sectors, especially through heat pumps and e-boilers. And this is something that we really need to recognize, but also incentivize. So given the limited time I have, I will briefly walk through some of the principles in a bit more detail, and then end with some insights on policy. So putting efficiency first is crucial. It reduces our total investments cost, and also make sure we can actually meet demand with locally available renewable heat. So I think for many of the people in the audience coming from the more technical side, they will be very familiar with all of these potential issues and solutions there are. But in a nutshell, it's basically we need to reduce distribution losses. We need to really optimize production, and we also really need to reduce heat demand and temperature needs in buildings. And lowering flow temperatures is a key solution to that. It brings a whole host of benefits in one go, and also enables much better use of these renewable heat sources. But also increasing digitization and automation is a big support in this, and of course adding thermal storage. Just to give an example, this is from a small district heating system, and they were in the process of expanding and also lowering their flow temperature. They were actually already at a relatively low temperature of 65 degrees Celsius, and they're lowering it to around 55. And you see that they got a huge benefit, especially in reducing their heat losses with 30%, and also really reducing the amount of electricity their heat pumps need by 37%, and also even increasing the yield from their solar thermal panels, and also their storage. So there's a manifold of benefits coming from being able to lower these flow temperatures. So then the second principle, we need to use heat planning. Pauline already touched on this one, so I won't dwell on this too long. Maybe one thing I do have to add on it is it really requires a national level support system. We have heat planning for towns, but it's really not enough to have them do it. It needs to be done well and needs to be based on the right principles. And especially smaller municipalities will not have the capacity and resources and knowledge to do this. So we need national level support systems for this. Also driving standardization, making sure not every municipality needs to reinvent the wheel and come up with their own way of doing heat planning, but can learn from the bigger cities, the front-runner cities, and then also have a good system of monitoring in place. And this also involves new legal powers for local authorities. For example, if you want to implement something like zoning, then at the moment in many countries, municipalities do not have the authority to do this. So new legal powers are necessary for municipalities. And finally, we will need to build a lot of capacity among city planners to make this work and also make the heat planning be effective in achieving our goals. Then valuing unavoidable waste heat, super important element. And I wanted to highlight here just a small example. So in theory, we have high amounts of waste heat available, and it's really a waste if we're not using it. It doesn't mean that every waste heat is sort of made equal. So even in theory, there can be high amounts of waste heat available, but in practice, there can be quite a few barriers to using it. For example, looking at Antwerp and Ghent, two cities in Belgium, both have nearby port areas with industrial areas, and a lot of waste heat available in theory. But then once they started doing their heat planning and really talking to all the waste heat providers in their town, they found out that in the case of Antwerp, it was really doable to build a district heating system based on the waste heat because it was in the right temperatures, the right amounts, not too far from the city, so limited transport. Also, they found that they had a lot of building types that were well suited for this. So high apartment buildings, meaning not too many connections. And they had a really good trajectory where they could put in the pipeline. And this made it feasible for them to really run a district heating system on waste heat. But then Ghent, which is not too far away, has a very different makeup as a city. It has much lower apartment buildings, so meaning many more connections would be necessary, making it much more expensive. Also, the waste heat was much further away from the city center. And also a lot of the waste heat was no longer available after the energy crisis because a lot of the industry really took a good look at their processes and realized they could really reduce their waste heat production, reuse it themselves. They started sharing it with other industrial neighbors. So a use was found for it, but it wasn't available to put in a district heating system for the households. So I think this is a super important element to realize that, yes, we need to use a lot of waste heat, but we also need to be careful about where and how to make this possible. And I think here it's really important to mention that heat planning is actually crucial in doing this, in analyzing what is there, but also making sure the sources are visible, ensuring that the providers of waste heat, the local governments, and the DHC operators are talking to each other to find out what they can do to make use of it. And if it is feeding it into a district heating system for buildings, that's great. And if it turns out to be the most cost-effective to reuse the waste heat within industry itself, that's of course also great because in the end, the waste heat will be used. Then fourth principle, which I think is really key in making district heating work and is especially relevant in those countries that have had maybe less of a history with using district heat and as such have underdeveloped regulatory frameworks for it, is really to ensure this end user protection and finding a system where people trust district heating as a clean heat solution. And also where district heating can compete on price and on service levels with other clean heat solutions. And in the future, this will especially be direct electrification with heat pumps. And there's many ways of, or actually that countries are regulating district heating and trying to do this, whether it's through price controls or ownership and operation controls or the way grid uses and access is organized. And I don't think there's one best way of doing it. But over the coming years, I think we will see a lot of developments here. And we are seeing this already, especially, for example, the Netherlands, but also France and Germany. Really a lot of updates are underway when it comes to the way district heating is regulated and also consumers are protected. But this is really a key part of the puzzle that we need to get right if we are to get high shares of district heating use in those countries. So as a final principle, we really need to reward energy system integration. So currently, sector coupling between heat and power is mainly done with CHP plants. And in a nutshell, this will mainly need to become heat pumps. So an analysis of multiple scenarios for climate neutral district heating in 2050 shows that there's a really big potential for heat pumps to become the main provider of heat, which shares between 40 and 70% of the heat mix. And in these projections, heat pumps largely replace fossil, but also bioenergy fueled heat plants almost entirely, really bringing down their shares below 10%. And this is something that we should really stimulate. And there's many ways of doing that. It can be direct subsidies for installation of heat pumps and e-boilers, but also it's really important to make sure we get tariffs that incentivize flexibility and sector coupling. So looking at the time, final thing I want to say is more on, okay, we have a lot of different parts of the puzzle that need to come together. And to this, we really need to coordinate policies to make district heating clean and also make it clean in a way that it can serve this wider role for the energy system. And this means looking at the heat planning side, but also energy taxation and grid tariffs, like Pauline mentioned, but also really at the building side. What building standards and codes do we have? How do we make sure buildings are ready for lower temperature heat in time? We need to really look at emissions and efficiency standards, and also then really the district heating regulation itself. So really that part on protecting consumers while enabling viable business models. And last but not least, I think it's also a key element for, again, public acceptance and trust in the sector to make sure that we also get energy communities and heating to function correctly, because there is a huge potential for smaller district heating systems at the neighborhood scale, and energy communities can really play an important role in this. So to round it off, let's see if I can go to my final slide. District heating needs to become clean, efficient, and smart, so it can really take up its role as a provider of key storage and flexibility. And we really need a coordinated policy approach across heat, buildings, and gas grids to make this happen. And I think this is really the challenge that we need to face the coming years. If you want to read more on our study, feel free to reach out to me by email or have a look at our website, look at the study. Would be happy to hear your thoughts.
Thanks a lot, Sam, for this comprehensive presentation. And I see a lot of alignments between the Aalborg study, the blueprint developed by Euratom Power, and the RAP study as well. So this is really good. This is the way forward. We have another poll. So you behind your screen, you are keeping engaged. So this is related to Sam's presentation. So which aspect of clean, efficient, and smart district heating do you find most challenging to tackle? Only one choice. We open the poll. Okay, a few more seconds and we can close the poll. Then we have the results. So, yeah, I think maybe you were then strongly influenced by Sam's presentation. So it seems that the most challenging aspect is making the economics work, followed a little bit further with improving efficiency and lowering flow temperature in the district heating. Sam, are you surprised, or does it meet your reasoning?
Well, I'm a bit surprised to see such a high share for making the economics work. But the flip side of that is that maybe it's, although it was still the second option, making it more efficient and lowering flow temperatures, is then not the hardest part, which I think is good because it's something we really need to reduce emissions. But yeah, making the economics work is a really tough challenge. And yeah, it's good to see, or maybe unfortunate to see that people agree on this, but it also shows that it's something we really need to work on and get the right regulatory frameworks in place to make this happen.
Turning to the chat, with the Q&A area, I see a question from Guillaume Joly. Hello, Guillaume. What is the dynamic vision of wasted sources? Won't it decrease as electrification and energy efficiency increases? So maybe I can try to tackle a little bit. I think it's there is no opposition here. We've talked a lot about the potential, especially urban waste heat. So it's actually fully integrated with the use of heat pumps. And as was evidenced in the Aalborg study, actually, this is also contributing to increase the COP of heat pump. If you are taking heat that has already a certain level of temperature, for instance, you are lifting the starting with the heat recovery from data center, from the cooling of data center or cooling of any buildings, you will start at perhaps 25 or 30 degrees. So you only need to lift a little bit more with your heat pump. So it's overall actually increasing the efficiency. And this is the same with the geothermal energy. So we see this actually as quite complementary and mutually reinforcing the energy efficiency. I don't know, Sam. Yeah, I think we're kind of coming to an end. But if you'd like to also chip in for any of the questions.
Yeah, I saw a lot of good questions. Some of them have now maybe they moved to answered.
I think it moved, so you can go to the bottom of answered. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. No, so I was just answering to a question on if there's a contradiction between building level efficiency and the EPC system, and also being connected to district heating. For example, disconnecting to improve your label by using a heat pump. And I know in Germany, for example, this is really, you can increase your label quite significantly by if you shift to a heat pump. And I was saying that under the new EPBD, that should partially be resolved, as under the zero emissions building, at least you should be allowed to use district heating if it comes from an efficient district heating system, which of course makes sense because it's still a label on energy efficiency, and just being district heating is not enough. It also needs to be really an efficient and clean district heating system. So yeah, that will hopefully partially resolve the issue.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam. Yeah, I think there is also a need, and this is being also fixed in the current discussion around the EPBD, to have better reflect this district approach also in the kind of information that are made available on the energy performance certificate. So, for instance, if the building is able to connect to district heating, or whether there is district heating available, is there like a hot water loop in the buildings, or all this kind of information. So that should also help, favor this district approach. I think, however, we are coming to the end of this session. So just, I think in conclusion, what we can say is that this is very positive that heat has come more in the spotlight. We hope and we'll do our utmost in 2024 with the election year, so it stays and it is more prominent on the EU agenda. And what would also help us is for you to read and disseminate the documents, the recommendations, the studies that were presented today. So you will receive an email follow-up after the session with the link, so you can do further reading and further engage with us on this issue. So thank you very much to our speakers and STEM and the Regulatory Assistance Project to co-organize this EHP talk today. And yeah, I thank our audience for their interesting questions. And we will see you online or offline. And I wish you a good rest of the day. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Pauline, and thank you, everyone.